If you are new to Salesforce Flows and don't have much idea on it, in this video series, I am going to teach you Salesforce Flows right from very basics and with the real-time scenarios. But before getting started, if you feel my videos are really helpful, just to support me, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. So let's move on to our scenario. Our scenario is something like this. We will have basically a form which will have name, email address and phone number. Now, as soon as you fill up this form, what is going to happen is that we are going to have a drop down. In the next screen, we are going to have a drop down. In this drop down, we are going to get two options, phone and email. Now let's say if I select phone outside this, now in this case what it is going to do is the system is going to try to find the contact with certain phone number. So let's say I put phone number as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, and then I select in the drop down as phone. Then the system is going to check whether there is such contact with certain phone number, right? Inside it will go in this direction. It will try to find out the contact with certain phone number. If it finds it, it will show the details of that phone, or it will show the details of that contact. But if it does not find it will just create new contact. On the other hand, if let's say you are putting some email address, let's say test@gmail.com, and inside the drop down you select email, then in that cases what will happen is the system will try to find the contact with certain email address. Again, if it finds certain email address, it will show the details of that contact. Else it will go ahead and create a new contact with that email address. So that's what we are trying to build a flow for. I am also going to introduce custom metadata to make this flow configurable a little bit. So let's get started. First of all, as we all know, I need to take name, email and phone number from the end user. That's why I am going to create a screen flow. So here I am going to select screen flow, and the only reason is because I have to fill up the form, right? I have the user to fill up the form. So I'm going to select screen because I need screens inside it. So that's the reason why I am selecting the screen flow. Now, I'm not much fan of the auto layout. If you are a very newcomer, it's much more better to use freeform because it gives you an overview and much more flexibility. But if you're new, as soon as you get experienced, you can move to auto layout. Now, the first requirement is that we need this form, right? The form will take the name, the email address, and the phone number. Now, to get this form, basically it's nothing but a screen. In the screen flows, you have to pull the screen. Now, whenever you need a flow or whenever you need to build a screen using the flow, you have to use a screen flow, and in that you have to pull the screen if you want to take input from the end user. Now I'm going to give the name, let's name it as form. This will be the API name of the whole screen component. Automatically you can see API name is populated. Now inside this I need three fields, name, email and phone number. So to get the name, email and phone number, first I'm going to write text. So under the input you can see there's a text and long area text. I need text. The reason is because I just want to take the username or name. So I'm going to take the text over here. Now I'm going to name it as name. The API name is auto populated. Now here I'm going to give a different API name. Let's say name underscore user. Now one of the problem that stands in front of me is that whatever name I'm going to put inside this name text box, right? I have to just flow this name to the other part. Basically, I just want to store the name, right? Whatever name I'm going to put, let's say I'm going to put Salesforce in 5 minutes inside it. I have to store that name, and then I have to also parse that name. I need to pass the name throughout the flow so that I can check whether the name is available or the email is available or something like that, right? So to do that, you don't need to do much. Whatever you are going to put inside this input box will be stored inside this API name. Just to prove this, I'll show you. I'll add one more screen. I'll give this screen as demo. The overall screen name is demo. API name is auto populated. Now if you want to show anything on the screen, just see. Okay, I just don't want to I don't want user to input something. Just I want to show the details on the screen. I can use display text. So under everything that is coming under the display, you can show display text. You can pull the display text, and using the display text you can show the details on the screen. So I'm just going to give any name to it. Let's name it as error, and inside over here I can put whatever message I have to show. Right now, I just wanted to see whether the API name, whatever value I'm going to put inside that previous input box, is it getting populated inside the API name. For that purpose, I can just use this resource picker. And if you remember, the lightning input that I created or the input box that I created, it had the API name as name underscore user. I'll just use this name underscore user over here. And I will just write name colon name underscore user. So now here what's going to happen is that inside this input box, I'm going to give any name. It can be Salesforce in 5 minutes or anything. It will be automatically populated under the name underscore user, and the same name underscore user I'm showing it inside the display screen. So whatever value I'm going to put over there, I will be able to see it over here as well. Let's test it. I'm going to give the name of the flow, that is flow basic learn. Let's click on save. Now if you want to just test your flow at this instant only, you can use debug mode. Like just click on debug mode. And I'm going to run this flow. So here let's give Salesforce in 5 minutes and let's click on next. So you can see name Salesforce in 5 minutes. So it's a live proof that whatever you are going to put inside that input box, the value will be stored within the API name, because I'm using API name over here. So right now I'm just going to delete this box. Let's move on to our real-time scenario again. So we need email and phone number as well. So I'm going to put again, click on this thing, and I'm going to pull phone and email address as well. So the phone API name I'm going to give phone underscore user. Okay, this is an API name. And email I'm going to give email underscore user. So now to just check whether our form is ready or not, I'm again going to debug and I'm going to run to see whether all the fields are added successfully or not. So as you can see, name, phone and email are now available in our form. Next thing is we have to have this drop down, which is going to provide us an information, or which is going to provide us a facility so that user can select on what basis he has to search the contact. Let's say if select phones, we will search based on the phone or email. But first we need to create this drop down. Now to create this drop down, I am again going to pull the screen again, because I need user to give the input about the Dropbox. Whenever user has to give the input, that's where I am going to use screens. So I'm going to name it as select source. Select source is basically used to display what source the we are going to search basis on. Okay, so first it's going to be pick list. So I'm going to pull pick list over here because I want to drop down, which we call it as pick list. And let's name it as source. We can say source and source user. Again, I'm going to give the API name as source underscore user. And then over at the bottom, I can select whatever choices that I want. So let's create, first of all, choice is basically used in order to create a drop down value. Let's say I'm going to create a new choice source, and I'm going to create a new choice. Inside this choice, I'm going to name it as email, because in the drop down I want email, and inside the label I'm going to write email only, because again the whatever drop down value will be stored will be shown as email, and if I select it, automatically the API name email will be selected. Let's click on done and let's save it. Let's test whether the email drop down was added successfully or not. I'm not going to put anything, and you can see under the drop down email has been added. Now one of the problem with this scenario is that there can be email right now and phone, but in the future they can also add username, they can also add password, they can add multiple things as per as their need. So in that cases I have to every time come to the flow and add the value to the drop down. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it customizable using custom metadata. So let's create one more custom metadata. I'm going to create custom metadata. I'm going to name it as search source. and give the plural name as search sources. And let's click on save. So our custom metadata is created. Next, I'm going to give the source. I'm going to create a one more field named as source, which is going to define the source. Okay, source, and the length would be 18 around. And let's click on next. Let's add it to the page layout. Now once this is done, I can just go to manage sources and I'll start creating the data. So first I'll name it as email underscore emails source. API name is automatically populated. And inside source, I'm going to actually write email only. Let's move on and create one more custom metadata for phone as well, because we have two options, email and phone. Phone source, and source will be phone. Now if you see inside source, I'm actually storing the drop down value that I want to show. So now once our custom metadata is successfully created, we are going to refer this custom metadata inside our flow. So let's go back to our flow. Let's click on the screen, and inside the drop down I want to show the values from the flows, right? From the metadata, sorry. So let's create a new choice resource. Now instead of selecting one choice, you can select record choice set, and here you can give search source metadata. This will be the API name of your record choice set, and you can select your actual metadata name. Our metadata name was search sources. Okay, I cannot see it right now till this point. Okay, I need to refresh it, I think so. Okay, it is saved. I'm going to refresh this page just to get the custom metadata in our flow. So again, I'm going to select here, and let's go remove this choice set, and I'm going to add another new choice set, would be a record choice set. Search source metadata. Search. Now you can see I can see the metadata as well. Let's select this metadata, and I don't have any condition at all, so I'm going to give none. Here, what choice label, for each choice label creates a flow. Okay, so what choice label you have to show, right? From where you want to show, like for an example, if I'm going to click on the drop down, what values do you want to show? If you remember, I'm actually storing the value inside source. If I go to this, inside source field, I was storing the actual value of the email and the phone as well. So here I'm going to use source as the main field, and as soon as I select that field, okay, what value should be selected out of all these metadata values, right? I want to again select the source. So if user can see inside the drop down as source, if he selects, he will only select email as well. So for that purpose, I'm going to select data type as source over here again. So in the drop down, he will be able to see source, and if he selects again, he will be selecting source as well. That is nothing but email and phone. Let's click on done, and let's now click and save and debug this flow. So now you can see the values are coming from metadata. Tomorrow, if someone wants to add more data or more metadata or more options to it, they can just go and create one more metadata, and automatically a value will be added over here. So now, once our drop down is done, next we have to decide whether it is selected from email or phone. If it is coming from email, or if you want to search it based on the email, then we have to go in this direction and we have to see whether such kind of record exists within the contact or not. So for that purpose, this is nothing but I have to decide, right, whether I'm selecting from phone or either I'm selecting from email. So here I have to decide, I have to go in phone direction or email. In such cases, you have to go and pull decision box inside it. Okay, decide source. I'm going to name it as, okay, source is email. Let's consider source is email. If source is email, in that cases, what we are going to do is, okay, let's now name it as test. For now, I'm just saving it. For now, I want to see the API name of the field that I created. So the name was source underscore user. Okay. So whatever value I'm going to select, it's going to get selected inside the source user. Now I have to check what is the value of source user. I'll remove this. I'll see what is the source user. Source user, if it's equal to email, right? If source user is equals to email, then I have to go in that particular direction. But on the other hand, I'll add one more outcome. Source is phone. In that case, if source user equals to phone, then we have to go into the another direction. So right now, if you see inside this decision box, I have two different directions. Basically, I have to decide whether user has selected phone or whether user has selected email. And based on that, I have to perform the operations. Now let's go and do the operations. Let's go in the email direction first. Now, if someone has selected email, we have to find whether such kind of contact exists with that particular email. To get that, you can use get records. If you want to search something within your system, you use get records inside the flow. So let's pull the get records, get contact based on email. Our object is we have to search from, that is we have to search from contact. So I'm going to select contact, and field is we have to search it based on the email, right? So email equals to whatever email that I've put over inside this flow, inside the start of the flow, I've put some kind of email address, right? That email address, I have to search the contact based on that email address, right? So I have to search whether the email equals to that of email underscore user. Now, if you remember, email underscore user dot value, okay, the value of it. So basically, if you remember, in the first screen, I had created an email input box. And inside this email input box, the API name was email underscore user, right? So I'm using the same email underscore user value, okay, that value, whatever value that I'm going to put inside this email box, I'm trying to search the contact with that email address. As soon as we find it out, okay, it will be most probably only one record. It won't be multiple record. That's why I'm selecting only the first record. Now I want more control over the flow, so that's why I'm going to select the third option, choose field and assign variables advanced. Here I'm going to create a collection variable. Let's name it as new resource variable get contact details on email where, okay, and I'm going to select it as record. Object would be contact. What I'm trying to do over here is whatever contact that I'm going to get, I'm going to store it within this variable. It's similar to that of querying a record, like querying a particular record and storing it within the variable. Similarly, I'm just trying to query the contact based on the email address, and as soon as I find it, I'm storing it within get contact details on email where. Now let's click on done, and it will be on basis of email. Like if source is email, we will go in this particular direction and we will try to find the contact with certain email address. Now the next is, if we actually find the email address, if we actually find the contact with certain email address, we have to find and show the details. So to show the details, first of all I need to find out whether I was actually able to find out the contact or not. That can be easily decided with the help of this variable. Now if there is some kind of value, if the variable is not empty, if this particular variable is not empty, this means we have found the contact with certain email address. On the other hand, if this variable is null and if it is empty, in that case, it's basically there was no such contact with this email address. So let's again apply a decision over here. Check if contact with email exists. Okay, if it exists, get contact details where on email where. I'm just going to remove this. Is null, false. Okay, false. Basically I'm just checking whether if it exists, this means the variable that we have created at the above get records, if is null, if it is not null, this means if is null false, this means if that variable has some kind of value, this means we were successfully able to find this contact. So let's click on done, and we also have a default outcome. I'll just show you. Default outcome is something similar to that of if else, and the else part is similar to that of the default outcome. there is if we have a condition, if this condition is not satisfied, we go to else, and the else part is similar to that of the default outcome. So I don't need to add one more outcome that contact does not exist. I will just use the default outcome instead of that. Now if the contact exists, then I'm going to show the screen and I'll show the contact with email. Okay, so we are going to show the email address, or we are going to show the name of that contact. Okay, so let's go, and I'm put the text. I will pull the display text again, as I want to just show the data on the screen. So I'm again going to pull the display text, name based on contact, based on contact, and here we are going to just show the name of that particular contact that we have found out. Whatever contact that we have found out, we stored it, if you remember, using the get records. Whatever contact we found out, I'll just click this. Okay, whatever contact that we found out over here, we stored it within this variable called as get contact details on email var. Now to get the name of the found contact, you can just use the same variable dot name. So here what I'm trying to do is, from that particular contact that I found, I'm just pulling out the name field, and I'll show the name field. Let's click on done, and let's show this particular screen only when the email or the record exists. But if the record does not exist, let's first of all save it and let's test whether it is working fine or not. So right now I have an contact with this email address named as flow@gmail.com. So what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to find the contact based on the email address using this flow. Let's debug it. An email we are going to give flow@gmail.com. Let's click on next, and we will select the source as email. Let's click on next, and most probably I should get an error. Yes, I'm getting an error. Now what could be the possible reason? And this is one of the most common error that you might get. The reason is because if you read this flow out, the error screen contact with email, the flow failed to access the value for this variable dot name because it hasn't been set or assigned. Now you get this error if the value is not been set or assigned. This means you are trying to get you have found the contact with that particular name, but you are just trying to query the ID out of it. As you are using the name, if you see right now inside this screen component, I'm trying to use the name, but I have not queried that name inside the get records. Get record is similar to that of the SOQL query, right? You have just queried the ID, but I did not query the name. So for that purpose, I need to query the name as well. And let's click on done again, save it, and let's rerun the flow. Now I'm going to click on run. I'm just going to give the email address, and let's click on next. Source would be email. Let's click on next, and you can see name based on email for the video, and the name of our contact was also for the video. So this is the way we found out the contact based on only the email address. Let's click on it, and what if such whatever email address that I'm going to give inside the input box, if I am not able to find out the contact with certain email address, as per as our flow, if we have found the contact, we have to just show it. But if we do not find this contact, we have to actually go and create the contact with certain name and email address. So let's try to do that. So now if email exists, we are showing it on the screen, but if it does not exist, we are going to use the default outcome. Now to create the records, you can pull create records, create contact based on email. Now we have to just create one contact. So that's why I'm going to select one over here, and I'm going to select use separate resources and literal values, and I'm going to select contact object because I want to create the record of the contact. Now over here, the name of the contact, that is the full name, first name, or okay, last name is the required field of the contact usually. So last name will be populated from the name that I'm going to provide it over here. Now if you have seen the overall video, if you remember, the name underscore user was the API name of the screen component. Now automatically whatever name I have provided will be populated inside the last name, and the email will get populated from again this email address which was named as email underscore user. Let's click on done. Now if you check this flow out, what's going to happen is that first of all we will get a screen form. We will select the source from it. Based on the source, if the source is email, we are trying to get the contact based on the email address. As soon as we found out the contact, then we are showing it on the screen. On the other hand, if we do not find it this contact, we are just trying to create the contact with that particular name and the email address. Now this part is done, email part is done. Let's move on to the phone part. Now once one part is done, you might be thinking, okay, I have to do all over again. No, you don't have to. The reason is I will show you a shortcut way. You can just select on this. Right now I have to just do the same similar thing for the phone as well, right? So I'll just copy this, I'll just use this, and I'll click on this duplicate icon. Using duplicate icon, I can just duplicate the get records, and instead of email over here, I'm just going to search it based on the phone. And instead of email underscore user, I'm going to use phone underscore user dot value. Everything rest would be same. I won't create a new variable. I can use the same variable because one variable, this variable will be used once at a time, right? So that's the reason why I'm going to store name again over here, and decision over here would be source's phone. Now once that is done, I have to check again using the decision. I'll again click on the duplicate and use the same decision over here as well. Instead of I can update the name, I can use email exist, I'll use phone exist. And I'll see whether the variable is null or not. If it's exist, I'm going to use the same variable again, and I'm going to use the decision box, same decision box again. Okay, if the value exists, I'll just use the same variable again. I'll just use the same screen component again, and I'll show the details on the screen based on the phone number as well if exist. If it does not exist, I'm just going to create another contact with the same email address. So our flow is specifically ready. Let's try to see whether it is working in the case of the phone as well or not. Let's debug it again, and here I'm going to select the phone number of this particular contact. Okay, let's click on run. Name is test for video. Phone I'll give this, and I'm going to give email as yukiop@gmail.com. Now I'm going to search it based on the phone. Let's click on next. So you can see I was able to find out the contact successfully. The next scenario is that let's see whether the contact is getting created or not. So for that, I'm going to use developer console to just check whether the contact was created successfully or not. So I'm going to give I'm going to use the same contact, but I'm going to search it based on the email address, and I'm pretty sure that I don't have any contact with certain email address. Let's say zzz. I'll add zzz at the end. I won't have it. So let's see whether the contact gets created or not. So I'm going to query the contacts over here, and let's click on execute. So you can see there are around 148 contacts. If I use this flow and if the contact size increases to 149, this means the contact was successfully created. Okay, I'm going to also query the name of it and email from it so that I can easily find out the contact that we have created successfully. Okay, so let's go and try to create next, and I'm going to search it based on the email address. Let's click on next. So as you can see, I was not able to see any screen. This means the contact was created successfully. Now if I again query this, previously there were 148 contacts. Automatically the contact size increased to 149, and the email that we used was, I think so, was this. Let's try to search So you can see one contact was created with this particular email address. So this was all about this today's videos. If you found this video helpful, I request you to please like this video and subscribe to my channel.